And hello to all the people who join us online. This is a new show, something I thought I would try during this time of the year. This is all about doing AWS questions on Stack Overflow. So my name is John Rotenstein. I'm a developer relations person or technical evangelist at AWS, and I spend a lot of my time answering Stack Overflow questions. And I thought, hey, if I'm spending all the time answering questions, why not stream it? And we can all answer some questions together and potentially learn some things from doing it all at the same time. So I encourage you throughout the show to participate, throw in some comments, throw in some ideas, and perhaps I'll also turn you into converts in doing Stack Overflow yourself. So what is this strange thing called Stack Overflow? Many of you may have landed on some web searches if you're searching for some technical information and you end up on Stack Overflow. And it looks a bit like this, a little confusing for first-time users, but a wealth of knowledge out there. And the great thing about Stack Overflow is it's a destination for programming questions. And there's some amazing stats out here. Let's have a look. Millions of visitors. The time between new questions, 14 seconds. So there's more questions than one person can possibly answer, and that also applies to AWS questions. And it's filled with, what have we got here? 29 million answers. So it's got lots and lots of information. Now, Stack Overflow is primarily about programming questions. So if you're asking about a programming language, great place. If you're asking about, let's say, AWS Lambda functions, great place to go. CloudFormation, yeah, that's coding. But when you start going in some of the AWS technologies, such as virtual private clouds, let's have a look. I can go in here and say, hey, how many questions do you have on AWS Lambda functions? And it's saying, yeah, 15,000 questions. That's pretty good. How about CloudFormation? I'm searching here by tags, which is a great thing that Stack Overflow has. So yeah, 4,500 CloudFormation questions. That's pretty good. What if I look for Amazon VPC? 1,300 questions. So less so for AWS technologies because it's primarily about programming, but people can often get questions in there. So I'm interested of those of you watching online, how many of you find yourselves using Stack Overflow? Do you often end up doing web searches, landing on Stack Overflow and getting some great information out there? Feel free to hop something in the chat. Let me know what your Stack Overflow experiences are as we go throughout this process. So I should first of all say I'm a regular answer on Stack Overflow. You'll find me here under my name, John Rotenstein. And what have we got here? Absella. Yep. I agree. You often wind up on Stack Overflow several times a day. You do a web search. You don't really care where the information is that you're getting it from. And Stack Overflow is highly rated. Vellingen Anthony, it's my Bible. Yeah, Stack Overflow is a great resource. There's some recommendations out there that you should not copy and paste code from Stack Overflow. It's too easy because a lot of people don't read the code. They just paste it in and they don't fully understand it. There's also some licensing issues you might be aware of where Stack Overflow is licensed under a share-alike GPL license, I think. And if you use the code to get off it, then you have to make your product also under the GPL license. So you really don't want to copy and paste. You want to be inspired by what you see there. You want to understand it, but you don't necessarily want to do it yourself. Mike, you use it all the time. Yeah, it's a great destination. So I have been using Stack Overflow for a number of years now, and I used to be an AWS trainer. And in between classes and things, I just hop online and I find some answers, and occasionally I go, oh, I can answer some questions, and I started doing it. So for the last 5 years or so, I've started answering questions on Stack Overflow, and I built up a bit of a reputation here. And this is what Stack Overflow is all about. When you ask a question, when you answer a question, you can build up reputation, and it's the community's way of saying, yeah, that was a good answer, that was worthwhile, are you worth listening to? So I highly encourage you to participate on Stack Overflow, log in, give people some upvotes if you find some good answers out there. So let's have a look. What I'll be doing throughout the show is going through and answering some Stack Overflow questions. I invite all of you to throw in some ideas for the questions that we're answering, or if you want to point me to particular questions. I don't know everything about Stack Overflow, about AWS, but I do like to attempt to answer them online. How many of you out there, by the way, have answered questions on Stack Overflow. A lot of you seem to be using it, but not all of you necessarily answer. Okay, so the way I use Stack Overflow is I normally do a search for any tags that are AWS or Amazon related, and I sort by the newest one. And Mike's answered some questions. That's great. So I search for lots of questions that are out there, and I pick ones that I particularly know about. Let's have a look here. Optimal solution in AWS to create a CSV file from JSON. So the title of your questions is very important, because people wanting to answer questions like me have a look at the title and then say, oh, is this something worth answering? So I can pop in here. Oh, Node.js, I'm not big in. So is there any optimal way of using AWS platform to automate the file transfer instead of handling programmatically? This is asking for a bit of an opinion. I might come back to that one later. I like to be able to answer ones that have a specific answer that's out there. Lambda and Python is something I quite enjoy. I'll put a link to this one in chat in case any of you want to have a look at this one and join in. I have a Lambda function that has a Python handler that submits a job to AWS Batch. So Lambda, of course, is our serverless code system. You can program in many languages like Java and Go and Node.js. I'm a big Python person, and it looks like here is their code that's submitting a job. Let's have a read. So their Lambda function times out before the response comes back. I've added a job to the queue via the CLI using the same definitions. The job can be seen in the queue. So he's saying it was working via the AWS CLI. And hey, Everlac, Neo is back. That's great. So CLI comes back instantly, but there's something amiss on the Lambda configuration. Perhaps it's not using the role. So one of the most important things with Lambda, but what people are suggesting it here, it could be timing out. So if it's waiting for a response from another system, it can take a while. The default timeout, it looks like you set the timeout 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes. That's plenty. Another problem that often happens with Lambda functions is that people configure a Lambda function to point to the VPC. And this is great if you want to access resources within a VPC, but it also means you're not automatically connected to the internet. And if you are making an API call out to an AWS function, so here we can see he's calling the Bodo3 client that connects to AWS Batch, it means that you might not have internet access. I see there's an answer down here, and indeed somebody has said, check the VPC settings of Lambda. So it looks like that's what's happened over here. Do they need to be on the same VPC? But he didn't say what that setting is. So let's provide an answer to explain how you've got to configure Lambda functions when you're calling AWS things. So if an AWS Lambda function is not connected to a VPC. By the way, as I type this, I'm using Markdown, and Markdown is great for bolding, italicizing, putting in links to things, and I think answers look a lot nicer when you use formatting in there, and people tend to vote better for answers that have some nice formatting. If an AWS Lambda function is not connected to a VPC, then by default it is connected to the internet. This means you can call AWS API functions, which reside to pompous word, should be lives or something, which resides on the internet. If your Lambda function is configured to use a VPC, it will not have internet access by default. This is good for connecting to other resources in a VPC. Yep, hello Sputnik, I'm answering this question right now. If you are better than me, you can jump in and you can answer the question before me. Happy to take suggestions of questions you'd like me to answer, or you can also help me answer the questions that are on there. So this is like live coding, except it's live answering, how the magic happens. When I started answering Stack Overflow questions, I wasn't very good either. I just found a question that I thought I could answer, and I put it in, and then suddenly people upvote. And as they upvote, you get these points, and you go, oh, people like what I'm doing. And it encouraged me to answer even more questions. And it just sort of built from there. And one thing I found is that I have learnt an awful lot by answering Stack Overflow questions, because I go, oh, that's an easy question. I'm just going to put a link to the documentation. I look at the documentation and suddenly it's not what I thought it was. So I actually learn a lot by doing it. And one thing I love coding is I can code up some little solutions, put it in there, other people get the benefit, and I get the practice from coding it as well. I like that. Sputnik, what can you spend the points on? You can spend the points on your resume. Stack Overflow has some great stuff for recommending jobs for you based on the reputation you have earned under particular tags, such as AWS tags. Stack Overflow will recommend jobs to you based on your skills. So a company can come along and say, we're looking for somebody with Python and AWS skills. Stack Overflow will target you based on those tags. And also when you submit your application for a job, you can refer back to your Stack Overflow, and that is a good community reputation to prove that you have those skills. So it's really useful. DGK, hello to you too. Anthony suggests, could you use private link as well? Oh, good point. Let's finish the sentence and I'll put that in. This is good for connecting other resources. Is he? But if you wish to communicate with an AWS service, you'll need either what do we need? A NAT gateway, which has to live in a public subnet with the Lambda function connected to a private subnet that has a routing rule that points to the NAT gateway, or I like this one. So what are you saying? A private link? It's more like a VPC endpoint. Now, there's various VPC endpoints available for different services. Let's have a look whether, in this case, AWS Batch is available. Let's whack up the font size here a bit. Search for Batch. Now, AWS Batch does not have a VPC endpoint, and so I can't actually recommend it for Batch. But if you were, for example, calling one of these services, an example being, let's say, EC2, if you want to launch an EC2 instance via a Lambda function that is connected to a VPC, it has to get to the outside world either through a NAT gateway or through a VPC endpoint for EC2. So a VPC endpoint that connects to the desired service. And since I had that documentation page up, I may as well link. I'll show you a little tool that I use here. And this is a little tool I have that copies a page link in Markdown format. And you'll see my little bit.ly link that I've got down here. And in there I've got a link to the plugins that I use. So I can go in here and I can say, paste in a link here. So that will now link to the documentation that connects to the design. Unfortunately, AWS Batch does not have a VPC endpoint. What a shame. So if your Lambda function does not need to connect to other resources in the VPC, you can disconnect it and it should work. Otherwise, use a NAT gateway in bold. So when writing Stack Overflow questions, you can actually preview your answer, which comes down here. And I like to bold a few words that are in there. So things like configured to use a VPC, NAT gateway, disconnected. And I like to think that it gives me a few more points for when I answer some of these questions. Let's have a look what people are saying. Imagine if you answered a question on Stack Overflow and then joined a company and saw that someone used the code you submitted. This happens a lot. So I have a lot of people come up to me at AWS and say, oh, thanks, I saw you on Stack Overflow and I used your answers. It was really great. I've even sometimes searched for information and I found my own answer that I wrote a few years ago, and that gave me some answers. So yes, it's amazing how many people go and do that. So I have my email address in my profile on Stack Overflow, and not many people actually contact me, but sometimes I get a call out from some of the people and they say, hey, can you help us with this particular problem we're having? I normally like to refer them back to the community, so they ask a question online and somebody gets the answer there. Zlidyan, I just got done implementing Elasticache and got bored, figured I'd hop on Twitch. This was recommended to me. Great, so feel free to join in, recommend some things, answer some questions while we're doing this. I should also point out, Stack Overflow can be a little unfriendly at times, or so people say. I don't see it too often, and they've recently done some things to recommend you be nice to new contributors. So you'll often see this new contributor badge that says they're fairly new. They've only got 11 points. If I have a look at this particular user, they're a member since today, so they're literally a brand new AWS Stack Overflow person. They probably wanted to ask this question. And so rather than sitting there and yelling at them for being stupid idiots or something, we are reminded to please be nice and help these new users. So I will post the answer to here. Now somebody else posted an answer, and oh, we have 3 answers. Excellent. Now Marcin is this excellent fellow. I think he's actually in Australia. I'm in Sydney, Australia at the moment, so it's my daytime. If you're in America, it's your nighttime. And Marcin is this really cool dude who is answering lots and lots of questions, and he wrote this while I was talking to you. I was just a bit slower. So let's see what he said. Doesn't have access to the internet, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he also pointed out you might need some additional role permissions in the IAM role that is associated with the Lambda function. So between that and this earlier shorter question, the guy should get some hints that that should be quite good. I'll return to the list. Yay, our first answer. So I'm happy to share those points with you. Talking about points, you'll see this little thing up here. You get an indication on Stack Overflow about what has happened to your reputation over time. So apparently yesterday I earned 153 points, and I can see the questions that gave it. Why 153? It's a bit odd. Apparently I lost 2 points from some, maybe somebody downloaded a question. Let's have a look at that one. Oh yes, so here is an answer that I gave back in 2018, and somebody downvoted my answer for some reason, and they didn't leave a comment to say why it was a bad answer, so thank you very much. But I don't worry too much about getting downvoted. Okay. Any interesting Stack Overflow stories from you folks watching out there, ways that you use it, people you've met online, things you've managed to solve? Throw them in chat. Happy to chat with you about that. And now, often you'll find questions here that are related more to other topics like SQL. This is an Amazon Redshift question, but being an SQL tag, a lot of people hop into it. So it's only an hour old. And if I hop into this question, so they're saying it's for PostgreSQL. Amazon Redshift, which is our petabyte scale data warehouse, is basically Postgres on steroids. So the front end looks like typical Postgres version 8, but the back end is totally changed to be optimized for large amounts of data. So he's saying it's an Amazon Redshift database. He's also tagged it as Postgres, and Postgres questions will often work. So they're saying they've got this little thing which has, looks like it's colon separated. Want to extract each key pair for a phone, etc. He can split part, but when you split part, it only gets one particular item out. You can't get all the bits out. Let's have a look. The data is messy. They're showing how to use a regex to extract a certain amount of information. And this person, wow, this is a great answer. The thing about extracting data from colon separated fields is you have one row in a database, and from my quick read of this, they want to extract multiple rows as a result of having that one row. So they'd like Phones audience is one output, youth promo is one output, no offer is another output. And the problem with that is SQL isn't really designed to extract one row into multiple rows. So what you have to do is you have to join it against something that can effectively give you the numbers 1, 2, 3 across it. And that's what this guy's doing. He's saying select the row number over all the rows. So he's effectively selecting the code 3 times. Oh, it's a crosstab question. I was going to say you normally have to select the same data 3 times and then output in 3 separate fields, but he's actually asking for a crosstab. So let's have a look. The first one was 429, category phones, youth promo, no offer. Category phones, youth, no offer. Yeah, he's just splitting up by rows. Anyway, plenty of answers there. Not going to try that one. So I just generally work through the headings, look for anything that interests me. Workspaces. I haven't used Workspaces much. Workspaces is the AWS service that gives you a virtual desktop in the cloud, whereas EC2 normally gives you a computer in the cloud, and you can do anything you want. You can run a web server, you can run batch jobs, you can do whatever you want. It's a Linux or a Windows machine. Workspaces is a bit different. Workspaces is a virtual Windows machine that you connect to via our client that looks like RDP and allows you to run a Windows desktop. So I use a Mac, and as a Mac user, sometimes I've got to try something on Windows. Maybe I need to experiment with a command line that somebody's given me. Maybe I want to run a Windows-only program, and Workspace is really great for that. Do we offer Windows 10? Okay, so Workspace's technology is actually Windows Server behind it, but it gives something called the Windows Experience on Windows Server. Desktop experience on Windows Server. And what this does is it gives you a pretend Windows 7 or Windows 10 experience on top of a Windows Server product. So even though we do actually offer Windows 10, let's say AWS Workspaces Windows 10, work that up. We now bundle Windows 10. It's not really Windows 10, it's really Windows Server 2016, which is pretending to offer a Windows 10 experience. So what's the advantage of Workspaces over the Microsoft developer environments with something like VirtualBox and all that? So VirtualBox you run on your own machine. The benefit of Workspaces is it's a permanent machine allocated to you that you can connect to anytime in the cloud. There's a client, and this is really neat. There's lots of clients available for Workspaces. You can get clients for Windows, quite obviously, the Mac, so you can remote control a Windows machine, but this is really neat. You can have other tablets and things with an interface into Workspaces. And oh, no phones are listed, probably because the screens are too small. So you can go to a meeting with a tablet. And what people find is if you go to a meeting with a laptop, everyone assumes that you are playing Minecraft or something when you're in a meeting with a laptop, or you're reading your Facebook. Whereas a tablet, you put on the table in front of you and people can see you're really doing your work. So if you bring your Windows computer to you as a tablet and you can flick through various things, it's much more open in a meeting. Same thing with doctors. It's been found that when a doctor uses a computer, they turn around and they have to use a computer on the wall, and all the patient sees is a person's back. And it's not as friendly. Whereas if a doctor comes in with a tablet, they're typically facing the patient as they're using the tablet. So it's a friendlier way of doing things. But just think of it as your Windows machine in the cloud. I knew some people who went to China one time and they were told, don't take your laptop because there's been stories of people having their laptops hacked into and private information taken out. And so what they did is they put everything on their virtual desktop. When they needed to use it, they connected through the Great Firewall, presumably, to their virtual machine. They could do everything without actually bringing their data into China. Not as ergonomic, though. As a tablet, maybe. So let's see. We introduced Windows 10 desktop experience. So I'll take a link to this page. I'd like to know if you offer Windows 10. Yes. And it's launched. The settings says it's running. So Amazon Workspaces uses, now what do we call it? The Windows 10 desktop experience. uses the Windows 10 DOS to give a Windows 10 like experience, but it is actually running on Windows 2016 underneath. Certainly better to bring a tablet back than from work than a laptop. Having a high-end laptop is more expensive than a high-end desktop. But yeah, laptops have come down in price quite a bit over the years. I think it used to be, don't buy a laptop, it's stupidly expensive, and now you may as well buy one. I have another story to tell. I had a manager once who went on a trip. He came back home, went through airport X-ray and all that, took his flight home, got home, opened his bag and found he had somebody else's laptop. And the reason was it was a Dell laptop, somebody else had a Dell laptop, they all look alike. And that's why I always recommend that you put stickers or things on your laptop, or even your name. You know, you put name tags on a child's lunchbox. Why not put it on a $1,000 laptop? Help you try and get the thing back. I've also been in an Uber car when a phone rang, and the previous person who was in the Uber had left the phone in the car and was trying to contact it, and we ended up dropping the phone back to them. So you've got expensive devices. Help identify which ones you're using, especially if it's an expensive laptop. So to give you but it's actually running as soon as underneath. This is a normal service provided by Microsoft. Just pretend it is Windows 10, and it will mostly work as you expect. Don't know about you, but Windows 10 is always hard to find the things I like. I've enjoyed the previous versions of Windows. Everything was where I expected, and Windows 10, it's sometimes hard to find things. Hopefully that will give them a link. It's not much of an answer, but there wasn't much of a question in there either. So thank you, iPegasus, for asking that question. Any stories from you folks out there about losing laptops on aeroplanes or phones, having devices confiscated like the Samsung notebook, etc. Ooh, IP addresses. I love CIDR ranges, because CIDR ranges, you either understand them or you don't understand them. A lot of people just can't grok dropping coffee on a phone or a laptop. Alpaca. A lot of people can't understand IP CIDR ranges. Spilling coffee on a laptop, yeah, that's pretty bad. I've seen those plastic, I call them keyboard condoms, you can put on top of a laptop, and that stops the coffee getting in. I joined a company one time, and they had one of these funky Apple keyboards, which was transparent, and over time you could see all their hairs and dirt and things that were kept in the keyboard. So sometimes using those good plastic covers on keyboards can be good. I don't know if the keyboard condom is the official word for them, but they effectively do that job. It's they're covering it up so that dirt and various things don't get within there. If you've got a question, just scream it out there, Alpaca. I did orange juice on a friend's laptop. I've also heard the story of somebody who they were working on their phone. They threw their phone onto the bed. Unfortunately, they had their laptop open on the bed. The phone went through the screen of the laptop, and they had to repair both the laptop and their phone. So don't throw expensive devices around. Let's say I have an workstation in your service. Let's say I want to upgrade to a better spec machine. What's the procedure like? Ooh. So the easiest way is to actually look at the pricing page for Workspaces. I have a lovely shortcut that jumps to pricing pages in AWS. And first thing to know about Workspaces, they have two different pricing. One is an on-demand pricing, which means if you're not using the workspace, it can turn off after a couple of hours to save you money, or you can pay a monthly fee and just keep it running all the time. So you'll see there are different bundles here. We have a value bundle, which is a low-end type machine, probably just enough to get by. A standard machine, we're starting to get better. It is Windows we're talking about, performance through to power. Oh, Power Pro, that must be a new one. That's got 8 vCPUs and 32 gigs of memory. Wow, that'd be good. So when you launch a Workspaces machine, you choose which of these options you want to use. So unlike EC2, where you can just flip in, hi Dracantus, unlike EC2 where you can just hop in and stop the instance, change the instance type, turn it on again, it's suddenly a bigger machine. I believe that with Workspaces, you choose that when the machine launches and you can't change it. What you can do, however, is take effectively an AMI. You take an image of your disk, you can then launch a different size machine using that image, so everything will be there, but it's separate workspaces that you have created for that is not as easy as in EC2. Mr. Bob, welcome back. Mr. Bob in chat is one of my favorite viewers. He watches our AWS certification quiz show that we do. Stop for a little bit while the COVID crisis is on, but we enjoy doing some regular quiz shows. If you are studying for the certification quiz show, CQ playlist, where's my playlist? Here it is. If you are studying for an AWS certification, I highly recommend you watch one of my other shows, which is the AWS Certification Quiz Show. And this is where our host, MJ Scott, interviews various AWS staff members, solutions architects, technical account managers, support people, and throws them some standard certification quiz questions. And let's have a quick look at one of these. Just turn off the sound. And the idea is that we put up a quiz question and you get to... the expert works through the quiz question and gets to try and answer it, while you, the viewers at home, get to vote on what you think is the correct answer, and you can try and compete against the expert there. We have stopped that for the moment because it normally needs 3 people in a studio at once. We'll see whether we end up doing it remotely or whether we'll be back in the office soon. So by all means, pop along and do that. Okay, let's have a look at this. So anything to do with CIDR, the first thing I always do is look for a CIDR calculator. And a CIDR calculator is a great tool for, who knows which is good here, I'll just pick one at random, is a great tool for figuring out what your IP address ranges are. And so I can go in here and say, oh, I've got, oh, I don't like this calculator, let's find another one. So I can say, yes, tell me about this particular IP address range, and it tells you things like 10.0.0/24 starts at 10.0.0.0 and goes to 10.0.0.0.255, which includes 256 addresses. There are CIDR and subnet calculator mobile apps too. Oh, that's good to know. I won't have to call up a website every time. And this confuses people all the time because they think they can create any CIDR range starting on any number, but unless you use a calculator, you can often get those things a bit wrong. Let's have a look at the question. I'm using a CFT. Now, sometimes when questions come up like this, you and I might know that this means a CloudFormation template, but not a lot of other people do. So I'm going to go in and edit this question. Once you get enough reputation on Stack Overflow, you can do things like edit. And while I'm here, I'll just remove the space before the comma. I'll say CloudFormation template, which will make it easier for other people, especially who don't have English as their first language. So let's have a read as I go. This is the code that I use, still not working. I'm trying to create the instant using CloudFormation template and to be launched with specific private IP address. Please help. What am I missing? Where would I mention the private IP that I need it to be assigned to the instant in the CloudFormation template? Okay. Again, be nice to people on Stack Overflow. Unfortunately, Stack Overflow, its primary language is English. I have seen questions non-English and immediately got closed out. People are required to do it. There are other language versions, I believe, of Stack Overflow out there, but they're not translated. So a lot of people do go to Stack Overflow to ask the big questions out there. I'll just expand abbreviation. I'll just save that for the moment. So it looks like they're creating a CloudFormation template. They're creating an EC2 instance. If you ever want to know the syntax for that, it's just a matter of copying that into your favorite search engine, and it will come up here and tell you how to program an EC2 instance of CloudFormation. Never program CloudFormation by hand. Always copy and paste from either previous templates that you've written that work well or from this documentation. So what are they doing? Find in map. So what they're doing here is when you launch an EC2 instance, you've got to provide an AMI or an image ID, and it's basically saying look up in another map they've got elsewhere based on my current region which AMI I should use. This is a common process that people used to use in CloudFormation. Let's do a bit of a search. And yeah, I'm trying to find an existing example. So sometimes a template includes, nope, I'll find my own example. This is YAML, which means it's probably going to be fairly new, but hey, mapping. No, nope, that's not a good one. One more chance to find it. Information mapping AMI hyphen region would be in there as well. Get rid of the word sample. And this might have some code for us. Okay, so here is an example of a mapping within a CloudFormation template that is saying, here is an Ubuntu region map for AP Northeast 1 for this type of hypervisor. Use this AMI. For this region, use that particular AMI. And it was a way of allowing your CloudFormation template. Yeah, I love YAML. Sputnik. Please, if you're doing CloudFormation templates, please use YAML. Much easier to edit, much easier to understand. You can put comments in like this, which is great. Yay. So it used to be that to find the correct AMI, you'd had to create this mapping, and it means that it fell out of date pretty quickly. Especially Windows AMIs. Spacing seems fine to me. Yeah. Windows AMIs get deprecated every Patch Tuesday. So when a Patch Tuesday comes out, we make a new Windows AMI and we deprecate the old one so people don't use it. Now, unfortunately, if you reference one of them in your template, then it'll get out of date. So these days, we recommend using the AWS parameter store to find an AMI. And hopefully I can find, here's an example. It's out there for both Windows and Linux. And what we have now is a simpler way of doing searching for the latest AMI for a given operating system. So here it is saying, find the latest Amazon Linux AMI, which would be Amazon Linux 1 in this case. And you can do that from the command line. So here they're saying, find me the latest Amazon image. You can also do it in CloudFormation. Where's the CloudFormation? Here it is. So you can put this little bit of code in the top of your CloudFormation as a parameter. And rather than asking the human for a question, it will go to this particular parameter store thing. It looks like it's Amazon Linux 2. It will retrieve the latest AMI for the region in which the CloudFormation template is running, and it will insert it into the latest AMI ID parameter. And later on, when you launch your instance, you can just say, refer to the latest AMI ID, which makes it a lot easier to then trying to specify each of the AMIs for each of the different regions and update them all the time. It's hard for me to understand when a scope starts and ends if I don't know the schema too well. It's funny, YAML, I'm not sure what a scope is within it, but the biggest problems that people have with YAML is with the indents and not knowing when to indent different things. I also have trouble with lists versus dictionaries and when you put those little hyphens in, so YAML can be a little bit challenging. Let's go and have a look at what's going on here. So they're also saying, this is what the whole question's about. They're trying to get a particular private IP address associated with their EC2 instance. Somebody's come up with an answer. Martin, an hour ago. This Martin is fantastic. Really have to shout out for him. He's doing lots of great work out there. So where you specify an IP, you could also specify a subnet. Yeah, very important to specify a subnet so you know which availability zone you end up in. Will it be a public subnet or a private subnet? And okay, so here he's giving the example of specifying that with a fixed IP address. Oh, so they literally put the word string in there. That's the problem. They didn't replace string with the particular IP address that they wanted. So, so much for that. Jason is too verbose. YAML's not verbose enough. That's probably quite true. Probably quite true. Now, Martin is going through and answering questions faster than I can. I'm just going to refresh my page. The little rectangle out here shows whether a particular question has answers. I've modified my search results here to only show questions that do not have an accepted answer on there. So if somebody's given an answer and has been accepted, I don't need to see it. The question asker is probably happy. But if somebody's given an answer, it doesn't mean it's the perfect answer, so I'm quite happy to look at questions, but I always look at the answers other people have given before I provide an answer in case it's exactly the same thing. Let's go and have a look up here. 2 minutes ago, somebody asked about Kinesis Event, Azure Event Hub. No thanks. Static S3 website hosting. Let's give that a go. 15 minutes ago. This is live, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. I'm John Rotenstein. I'm answering Stack Overflow questions on AWS topics live. You're welcome to hop into Stack Overflow and answer them with me, and we can work on questions together. So, the ARMS on S3 static website not working. Probably is working. I have updated an index.html file from a template and modified as per my requirements. When I open the index.html file on my local machine, everything is working as it's supposed to be. When I upload the files on S3 Buck with proper hierarchy, the web page is misaligned and I don't seem to understand what the problem is. They put a full stop at the end. So, okay, what do you think this one's about? The question is very cute. Yeah, that's nice, Sputnik, but what are they asking for here? It's supposed to, when I upload the files on S3 with the proper file hierarchy, it's misaligned. I don't seem to understand what the problem is. So the suggestion here is it's not using styling. I like that idea. These days an HTML page is not fully self-contained. In the old days you used to put all the formatting in an HTML page and who cares. These days you've got all the CSS sheets and all that go with it. There's a favorite site of mine, Zen Garden, I think it's called. CSS Zen Garden, and this website is all about Professor Graviton is asking about CSS. So a web page contains data to appear on the page, and common practice these days is to separate the content of a web page with the formatting of a web page. So if you want to change the color of a button, instead of going to the web page and changing the color of a button, you can go to a style sheet. What does CSS stand for? Anyone know? Something style sheet. Custom style sheet, and you can modify the format without modifying the HTML. And this website, CSS Zen Garden, is a great cascading style sheet. Thanks, Vichin. This is a great example. All of these websites they have on here have exactly the same HTML page. The only difference is the style sheet that's been given. So here is a HTML page that looks very grey and washed out and various things. I could go in and washes and styles. I can go and pick a different page like steel, and this has the same content on the web page, but it is just the CSS, the cascading style sheet, that modifies the view of this thing. So what's this about? CSS and Garden. Oh, it's animated when I touch on things. That's really amazing. Let's try another page here. Oops, go back instead of closing. Mid-century modern. This is yet another page. It's the same HTML, but a different style sheet powering it. So completely different look, and it's only thanks to the, go back, it's only thanks to the style sheet that it looks different. Oh, there was one there called A Robot Named Jimmy. That looks interesting to me. Woohoo! So this is the same page yet again with Jimmy the robot in the background. So why are we talking about this? Yes, this person's HTML page might look different because while the page content is the same, if it's referring to a CSS file somewhere else, normally it's an include at the top of the page, that file might be gone. So I can't answer anything more to this one. However, I'm interested in this topic. When I answer a question on Stack Overflow, it will tell me if somebody has come back and made a comment or made a modification. I can click on this little file cabinet and it tells me, hey, these people have come back. Some say, God bless you, this is enlightening, I appreciate it. Or some people come back and ask more questions. So if I put a comment on a page or I give an answer and somebody else does something on that page, I get notified. In this case, I'm not providing an answer, so I can just click this little follow button. This was recently added on Stack Overflow. And what it means is if somebody else is coming back, maybe it was Charles who commented on Charles, is not using any styling. And I don't know what the problem is. So I'm going to put in this comment here. Mr. Bob, you want to comment on Stack Overflow or you want me to put it there? Hold on. It wouldn't be a permission issue if they can get the HTML page. And if the HTML page isn't referring to something else, possibly relative versus full path, make the CSS public, not using any styling. I don't like asking people to provide a link to the page so I can test it myself. Can you provide a screenshot to show us the difference? That might help us debug a few things. I now don't need to follow the question because it will automatically notify me when it's coming through. He replied to himself, yeah, it was a bit strange there. So, so much for that one. Cognito, serverless, extract a word, a character from Postgresql. That's what we were looking at before. Workspaces, power down. Let's see if this is, sometimes people ask, how can they have an EC2 instance automatically turn itself off after doing a job? So let's say at a certain time, 10 o'clock each night, you have a schedule that fires off. Am I using Chime for this presentation? No, I'm just going across through OBS using capturing my screen and sending straight to Twitch. So where was I? Normally on EC2, if you launch an EC2 instance, say at 10 o'clock, and you have a user data script that launches a batch file on that instance, when the batch file is finished, you need some way of turning off the machine. And a good way of doing that is have the script itself turn off the machine when it's finished. And the easiest way to do that is to call the operating system and say, hey, please shut down yourself. In fact, I recently wrote a blog, dev2 automatically, no, requested pays, shutdown dev2, because I see this a lot. Here we are. I wrote a blog post on this on dev2, which is a bit like Medium. It's another blogging type platform. So how to auto stop EC2 instances when they finish a task. And it's exactly what I suggested. You might have something firing off doing a job, and I'll just scroll the punchline down the bottom. You can have a shutdown message, and this one works very nicely. Pseudo Shutdown now. The -H means halt. The shutdown message tells the operating system, turn yourself off. If you don't put the -H, I discovered a while ago, it doesn't tell the hardware to turn off. So you know when you shut down your machine and when it's finished it goes and it turns off the computer. That's what the halt, the -H, tells you to do. And one time I ran this command, didn't put the -H, and the EC2 instance kept going, but was totally unresponsive because there was no operating system running. So make sure you use the -H in there. And this is easier than making an API call out to the EC2 interface where you'd normally say, hey, stop instances and here's my instance number. You can tell the instance to turn itself off. But in doing so, you need to configure a shutdown behavior. Let's show you what this looks like in the console. Is shutdown different than a net0? Ooh, net0 is a very operating specific. Anyone out there who can answer that question? What a net0 does versus a shutdown? So I can point to a instance here and I can say instance settings, change shutdown behavior. So shutdown behavior says, hey, if the operating system shuts down this machine, should you stop the machine in EC2 or should you terminate? So terminate is great if you never want that machine again, or stop is good if you want to use that machine again in a later time. So if you want to completely throw away the machine after your batch job is finished, you can change it to terminate. Stop is the default. Or if you want to reuse the same machine every time, you can. I should link this article in the chat so you can read it if you wish. Another interesting thing is you can use this magic. Normally, a user data script on an EC2 instance runs the first time you boot the instance up. And it runs the script, it normally installs some software, and then it doesn't do anything else after that. The next time you boot the machine, it won't reinstall the software, which is fine. But maybe you're reusing an EC2 instance to run the same batch every time. And you'd like to have that script run the next time the instance starts up again. So the magic that makes a user data script run on an EC2 instance is this thing called Cloud.init. And Cloud.init has the ability to run a script every time you start an instance. If you put it in this directory, the var-lib cloud scripts per boot, it will run the script every time you boot up. So the operation would be at 10 o'clock at night, you might have a Lambda function trigger that starts the instance. The script would be in the per-boot directory, so it would trigger the batch job running on the instance. When the batch job is finished, it runs shutdown now, and if you had shutdown behavior set to stop, it will turn itself off and it will be ready for the next time you want to run, as opposed to having to launch a new one. Somebody's saying init0 is like, thank you Soldats, init0 is like shutdown-p, I believe. Shutdown-p. Coronavirus. Let's shut down Linux command options. Shut down after 1 minute. How to shut down a machine. Shutdown command help. What is a -p? Instructs this system to shut down and then power down. Oh, that sounds pretty good. -h tells the system to shut down and then halt. I'm now very confused about the difference between them. Does anyone remember the old talk saying it's now safe to turn your computer off? That's right. I think the Mac was the first machine that could actually turn itself off. I remember using a Lisa computer, which was the pre-runner to the Mac. For those of you who are not quite old enough, the Lisa was the precursor to the Macintosh. If you read the history of Steve Jobs, he started working on the Lisa, he got thrown off that team, he then went and made the Mac, and the Lisa was a $10,000 computer. It was crazy. And under here you'll see a little power button, and this was not a power button, this was a power off request button, and if you hit it, it did what the modern day systems do. It does a shutdown, it saves your documents, it gives you a chance to say yes, no, before it actually turned off the computer. And this was amazing because it was the first time that you didn't have a real power button to turn off the computer, and it was possible that you couldn't actually turn off the computer. Sometimes it might hang and you've got to pull the power cord out, which is even harder on laptops who have batteries, and sometimes you have to wait for a laptop to run out of power before you could fully shut down the machine. It's lots of fun history in there. I went to an Apple store in Hong Kong, I think it was, one time, and I was chatting about my history of buying Apple computers. For example, one time I went to an Apple store and bought a laptop, and while I was waiting, the Apple staff loved to, they're told, have a chat with the customer, be nice and engaging, and the guy said to me, oh, is this your first Mac? And I said, no, I bought my first Mac in 1984. And I could see gears whirring in his head, and he was going, hang on, that was before I was born. So I've been using Macs for a long time. I also talked to them about, in Hong Kong, about using Lisa computers, and they were fascinated because all these people who just love having iPhones and iPads and all this don't appreciate the rich history that Apple brings to us. Anyone ever used the Next computer? I have the book about the Next. I don't think I've actually ever touched one. I've seen one. A great thing I would recommend to you, the Seattle Living Computer Museum. If you ever want an excuse to go to Seattle, probably not at the moment, things are rather shut down at the moment, but if you ever want to go there, I extremely recommend that you visit the Living Computer Museum, livingcomputers.org. Did I get that right? Yep. And what they have here is every computer you could ever think of historically, and they're all up and running. So you want to use an Apple II, fine. You want to use an Apple I, you can use an Apple I. You want to use, oh, this is the early computers they used to use for, who remembers the name of that thing? Very famous computer. It looks a bit like radar things, but it wasn't. Atari computers, VR helmets, great things. They also have an original Xerox PARC computer, the computer that inspired Steve Jobs to make the Macintosh and the whole UI WYSIWYG design. Fascinating place. Go there. You can go into the cold room with all the air conditioning and play with the mainframes and play Oregon Trail on there. It's really, really great. Back to the question. Trying to figure out how to get power down time with Boto 3. I hate it when people start their questions with a precursor like, I'm not very good at AWS, I'm just new to this. Like, Stack Overflow is a Q&A site. Somebody else, like you, will eventually do a web search and want to ask the same question that you are asking. They just want to make sure you have the same question and the answer is applicable. They don't really care about whether somebody doesn't know much about stuff. So often, it's not a good idea to start your question by saying, I've tried everything and I don't know what to do, or I'm new to this. So they made a Python script that says EC2 name. Okay, some of the formatting might be a little bit mixed up here. So what I'll go in is I'll go in and clean up a bit of formatting.
so we can see it. I'm also a stickler to capitalizing my sentence case while I'm in there. And I'll just change that to a thank you, take the person's name out, and it's okay, pretty bare. Okay, I'm going to get rid of their first paragraph and format this thing to say, oh, it's a pretty Python thing here. Always format your pretty questions. Thought it might be state reason. That's also a back tick in Markdown. Will insert code Markdown into it. Mark that as formatting. While I'm at it, I'll tag it as being a Amazon Web Services question. I love going through and tagging lots of questions. If you do go through Stack Overflow and you tag things, you can get rewarded for it. So there are things called badges in Stack Overflow, and they will reward you for doing various things, such as I'm looking for an editor tag. Here it is, copy editor. So I have a gold copy editor badge that says edit 500 posts excluding your own or deleted posts and tag edits. So I've edited up well over 500 questions on there, and I get a nice little reward for doing so. So they're saying blah blah blah. Is it possible to know programmatically when via Boto when an EC2 is powered up down? It might be the state reason. So an EC2 instance does have a state reason attached to it that tells it why the instance was running or stopped or something like that. It's not very good, and it also I think has the time of the last shutdown, but only the most recent shutdown, so you can't often get uptime from that. So somebody here is saying use CloudWatch event rules to be notified when instance is stopped, etc. Good old Martin answering there again. Set as a target Lambda. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I'm not too sure what this person is doing. Let's move on. So is this inspiring any of you to do Stack Overflow answers or read through, or at least vote if you ever see a good question or whatever in there? I should talk a little bit about voting actually. Let's find a question here. Throw an alarm code from a function. So there are these little voting buttons, and it's a bit hard to read here. It says this question shows research effort, it's useful and clear, and a downvote means the question does not show any useful research effort, it's unclear. So it doesn't mean it's a good question or it's a bad question. It means have you spent the time to ask a really good question? And there's a really good video out there. Let's see if I can find you. Atwood asking Stack Overflow questions. One of the people who created Stack Overflow is Jeff Atwood, and he made this fantastic video which was actually for a Korean user group meeting, but he did it online, and it goes for about an hour, and he explains the philosophy behind Stack Overflow. And I'll just put a link to this one in the chat so any of you might want to watch it. And he does a really, really good job of explaining the effort you should go to when asking a question. Give code examples, give the error message, try it yourself to make sure that you're not in error, list the steps that you took. So a really good question deserves credit. So if I see any good questions out there, I will upvote. I tend not to downvote because some people get upset by losing a reputation point. But if I see good answers that I agree with, I like to upvote them as well. Is there a way I can throw an alert from my mailbox? Don't know about that. Let's find one with an answer, and I'll show you about upvoting an answer. Stack Overflow has saved me many times at work, says Soldats. I appreciate the clear answers. Yeah, clear answers are the best. So this looks like a good question. Well, it's not a great question. Somebody's just dumped a whole lot of code in here. There's a thing called how to ask a good question on Stack Overflow. If I see bad questions, I often link to this particular page, and this page says how to ask a good question. Do your research, give it a good title. The title is so important. Be nice in spelling and punctuation. We don't count bad at you. So it's really important to give a good question. Don't just dump us with a whole lot of code. And there's something called a minimum viable example, I think MVE, where you provide enough code so somebody can understand or reproduce the problem, but not so much code that they have to read through all of this stuff and figure out what the code is necessarily doing. So not a great question. Somebody here in an answer is saying various things. I might say, oh, that looks like a particularly good answer. Upvoting an answer means it's useful, and downvoting an answer means not useful. So I can give that an up answer. Iklinak will then get a few reputation points. Have a look at this. They were 6,615 a moment ago. If I have a look at their profile now, they've gone up to 6,625. So I gave them 10 points of reputation. They are sitting there in Zagreb, Croatia, and they suddenly go, "Ooh, somebody upvoted my answer. I think I'll give more answers." It's a great way of helping the community out there. So please, the minimum I ask you is if you land on Stack Overflow after doing a search, please click that up arrow whenever something has helped you. So I might do like Python add item to list. And if I land on a Stack Overflow answer, somebody here is asking a question. You'll see 3,000 people asked about Python list methods, and 5,000 people have said, "Thank you very much, your code example is scoring very well." So a good answer can catapult you. This one has 40 answers showing on here. Now, it's worth mentioning that the highest voted answer is not necessarily the best answer. By default, the answers are showing based on the number of votes. But you can also sort them. And let's see, does this show the first one first? It's showing 08. I really like the newest one to come first, which it doesn't quite do. But what I could do is go down to the bottom and view some of the most recent answers, especially regarding AWS technology. Things get out of date. I found my own answers on there saying Lambda functions run for 30 seconds. They used to. Then I found answers saying they run for 5 minutes, which they used to, and now the limit is 15 minutes. So sometimes it's worth looking at the newer answers to get the truth, not necessarily trusting the old answers. Also, people can delete their answers. So this is somebody who gave an answer. A comment doesn't add anything useful. Avoid repeating what somebody else has answered. So this person with a diamond is a moderator on Stack Overflow, and they have the right to go and delete answers out there. If you ever see an answer that is not particularly good, you can click this little flag icon and you can say it's spammy, somebody just tried to advertise their wares, it's a bit rude, or not an answer. This is a common thing. Somebody might put a question in an answer. So they might go, "Are you using a VPC or not?" That doesn't belong in an answer, that belongs in a comment. And you'll often find answers closed off if they should have been a comment. Or you can come in here and say needs a moderator convention. Maybe somebody is posting multiple answers or multiple questions, and you can get a moderator to close it off. So why you're answering a question has been answered many times. The question's 10 years old. So somebody from 2018 giving an answer that is not much better than the answer in 2008. Anyway, I'll go back to sorting by votes. Let's find another answer to do. I like to do lots of answers. Anyone out there? Stack Overflow. Yep. Any questions out there you've got about Stack Overflow? Just throw it in chat. Any fun Stack Overflow questions you've got? Any AWS questions you particularly might want me to answer, or that you want the audience to answer? You are welcome to do as well. Free disk space. We're using the CloudWatch agent to upload instance metrics to CloudWatch. So by default, an Amazon EC2 instance provides only a few metrics. You've got network access, CPU load, and disk access, network access, and CPU. And that's because EC2 is running a virtual computer. It can only see the virtual hardware, and the only stats it collects is what that virtual machine is doing, what's going in and out of it, what's going to the disk, and how much CPU is being used. It can't look inside the computer. That computer is running an operating system. It could be Windows, it could be many flavors of Linux. There's no way for it to know things like free disk space or free memory. If you want to collect those sort of metrics, you've got to install an agent on the machine itself. And that agent will then report metrics back to CloudWatch, and you can respond to it. So in this case, the CloudWatch agent, let's find a link to that, collecting metrics from EC2 instances with the CloudWatch agent. I'm going to be a little bit nice here for future people reading this question, and I'm going to change CloudWatch agent into CloudWatch agent and put a link back to that page. We're using a CloudWatch agent to upload. I've been able to create a Bodo3 script to create alarms for CPU utilization greater than 85. CPU does not need a CloudWatch agent, but need to get the logical disk free space. That does require the CloudWatch agent because it has to run within the operating system that's running there. Another post showed total can be used for the SSM agent. Now he's talking about SSM agent, our systems manager. It used to be called something else, so it's abbreviated as SSM, but now it's known as just systems manager. It doesn't work for the metrics reported by CloudWatch agent. The following code is what I use to create an alarm. So you can of course do everything in AWS in three ways. You can do it through the management console, you can do it through the command line interface, or you can do it through API calls. In this case, Boto 3 is the software development kit, the SDK for Python, and you can set things up via that. So it looks like they're going through here, they're getting a list of all EC2 instances that are running, and they're putting an alarm. So that means creating a CloudWatch alarm based on certain metrics. I'll just save my edit that was in there. So what can I do to run this on all instances and report logical percentage free space for all volumes? The hardest thing with CloudWatch is creating a set of parameters that can correctly pull out what you want, because you need to have things like the namespace. You need to have the time range is also very important. So doesn't have the time range here, does it? Less than CloudWatch and period every 60 seconds, I presume. It doesn't have a time range. Oh, it's an alarm, so it only needs to have a look at the last 60 units if it's above 15. I don't know about that one. I would have to experiment and set up the CloudWatch agent to know that one fully. So another one that I can't answer at the moment. I've always wondered why Boto is named Boto. That's an interesting question. He's named Boto. Now, isn't it fantastic what you can find on web searches? Understand Boto is a dolphin. That's interesting. Here we are. So Mitch Garnett is the person who created Boto. In fact, he did such a good job of it that he then joined AWS and is working in the tooling team. So I don't know if he maintains Boto anymore. Boto is actually phenomenal. It's embedded within our AWS command line interface as well. It's critical to a lot of tools. And when teams are making new products, the first thing they do is get Boto working with that new tool so that they can test out their whole thing. So this is the definitive answer. It was named after a freshwater dolphin native to the Amazon River. Isn't that cute? Totally confusing to everyone else, but I hope he's happy about that. Can I give him a bit of love? Oh, I gave him some love. Isn't that nice? Thanks, Mitch. Nice fellow. Any other random questions out there I might be able to answer by doing a web search? Have you seen this? What's the website called to get a... What's the website to go on Google? What is it? Oh, let me Google that for you. Thank you, son number one, for doing that. Whenever people ask me silly questions, I can go to this website. I'll choose my search engine as Google, and I'll say, why is Boto named? And it gives me a link. And I can then provide this link back to somebody, and when they click on the link, it does the following. Step 1, visit Google. Step 2, type in your question. Step 3, click the button. Oh, and it used to give the results. Maybe I've got to click that myself, and then it comes up with the answers. And it's called Let Me Google That For You. Oh, it used to come up. Oh, that's better. That's interesting. It's not the official Google page anymore. It's under their tag, but it might be Google search powering it. So if you ever want to be a smarty pants and tell your mother how to search on, thank you for Googling it for me, my pleasure, Sputnik. You can just send your mother that link. You know, how do I get to Facebook? Well, apparently the biggest search term on Google is like facebook.com because people put the URL in the search term rather than the heading. So lovely. WooCommerce. WooCommerce is a commerce plugin for WordPress, which allows you to do trading on there. You're asking someone questions, you're not working from home. Using Cloudfront for digital downloads of products. Ooh, I'm not going to answer that because I'm not too big into WooCommerce. Grok filter patterns. Give me something I'd like to answer, preferably with some code. Create a VPC flow log. VPC flow logs can capture web traffic and show you which IP address traffic is going to and from. It doesn't store the actual traffic. For that, you need VPC traffic mirroring. But it's a great way of debugging security groups and things that are going on. Have you seen If Google Was a Guy video? It's so funny. So I reckon Mr. Bob recommends you all go and watch the If Google Was a Guy video. I'm not going to play it now because I don't know what it contains and I don't want to stream things that I don't know what it contains. Other things I would recommend in this day and age is video conferencing. God, what are those funny videos for, in real life? In real life, it's not safe for work. Good to know that. I recommend this one: a video conference in real life, a comedy sketch that shows you what it's like when you do a video conference and a conference call in real life for traditional phone calls. These are real, fantastic videos. I highly recommend you watch. Real life Zoom. Oh, 1 week ago they've come back and they've done a new Zoom call. I've definitely got to watch that one. Add it to my to-do list. Highly recommend that team. There's another great video they used to make. I can't remember what it was. All about product management in real life. Okay, we go off topic now. Watch it right now. Yeah, it's a great video. I'm not going to play it now. Documentation in Redshift. So Redshift, I love Redshift. In fact, I joined AWS because of Redshift. I used to work for a small company called Atlassian, you might be aware of. At least they were small when I was working for them. And I started doing some growth work. And we had lots of data. We're using Redshift. And I like Redshift so much that I started using AWS. And then I ended up joining the company as a trainer. So I've always had a soft spot for Redshift in AWS. And I used to use it so much that I actually got to know the documentation engineer for Redshift. It's worth mentioning that whenever you use AWS documentation, if you find a particular error in the documentation, you are most welcome to provide some feedback. So if I go into the Redshift documentation, let's go for the developer guide, and I'll pick a random page using the copy command, very popular. If you ever find any problems on these pages, you are welcome to click this feedback link. And whoa, that didn't look too good. Welcome to click the feedback link, and BSD guy, you are awesome. You're saying that to me or to Sputnik, not sure. You can go into this feedback page and inform them of broken links, bad code, etc. I've done that quite a bit, and being an internal staff member, they often write back to me and let me know when things have been updated. Often I put a link from Stack Overflow questions. So I've found situations where in Stack Overflow, people have found that documentation is wrong. There is a command which returns something about AWS users and it doesn't provide tags, but the documentation says it provides tags. So I copied that Stack Overflow question, put it here and went, hey, did you know the documentation is wrong? And sometimes I've got really fast turnaround of the documentation. So by all means, let them know. Another thing that they've done with documentation is they have hosted in GitHub the AWS documentation. So they've sort of open sourced it. And you can go into GitHub and do a, let's see, repositories, let's look for Redshift. And great, here is the Redshift developer guide. So you can go into GitHub and find the error on that particular page and submit a pull request, and they'll review that and update it. So rather than trying to explain it in this tiny little box, you can provide the actual fix for what they should do. It looks like it's all in markdown format here. So this is a great way of helping other people. We're all part of the AWS community. I encourage you to provide feedback to lots of those. So I actually got to know the documentation engineer on Redshift and often providing them with updates and things, how to fix it. So this question is quite interesting to me. No one has answered it yet, so it's worth looking. Try to automatically generate a data documentation in the Redshift cluster for all the maintained data products. Okay. They would like to have table locations, descriptions, each column, blah, blah, blah. Getting descriptions automatically is impossible, but I couldn't find a way to store the descriptions in Redshift directly. Instead, I want to have a third party. So, little fact, Redshift has STV tables. I'll call them system tables. Redshift has something called system tables. Hello, Classical Uncle. Thanks for joining us in here. I'm going through Stack Overflow questions and generally talking about AWS and being sidetracked a lot on looking at YouTube videos. Amazon Redshift, our petabyte scale data warehouse, has something called system tables. And system tables give you access to a lot of the information behind the scenes in AWS. So I can go in here and say there are tables for logging and tables for looking at snapshot data. And there should be something in here that gives information about tables. Redshift is based on Postgres. So Postgres would have the information on the tables. These are the additional bits of information that Redshift puts on top of it. So actually looking for PG table view, Redshift PG table information. I have no idea what I'm searching for here. PG table def. PG stands for Postgres. Returns information about the tables that are visible to a user. There's another one you can use in there. Hello, Richard. There's another one you can use in there to get information about the columns within a particular table. So, looks like it includes the table columns. So it's these table definition things that could be useful for this person. But what I think they're doing is they want to add a description to each column. This is really good for making a data dictionary. In the past, I used to be a reporting analyst, and I would make up reports, and the most important thing is having good documentation. And I was working at Atlassian. We have a wiki called Confluence, and the documentation would go in Confluence, and Confluence could call SQL within the wiki page. So my documentation for a database included a live call out to show some sample data from the database itself. So if you're ever documenting a database, think about doing a wiki that can really query and show the actual content from there. So it looks like he's trying to add a column description onto there, and I don't think there is data encoding of the column. There is no default field for including comments in there. Redshift column comments. I know that some flavors of SQL allow you to add a comment. And here is an example. You can put a comment on a table column. So this might be a way you could do it. You could store a comment on the column. I think it's stored in a separate table, but it will allow him to get it back again. So let's potentially give that as an answer. Getting descriptions is pretty impossible. I couldn't find a way to store descriptions in Redshift directly. Okay, let's give him an answer. Amazon Redshift has the capability to store. This is where all my typing classes came in handy. I learned to type on real typewriters. And I discovered a P's. You heard the expression, mind your P's and Q's? They're the letters used with your pinky fingers, and they're very hard to type on traditional typewriters. If you're looking for a good typing program, I highly recommend typingclub.com. My teenage children did this, and it was a wonderful thing. It's free. There are bits where it says, hey, why don't you pay to upgrade? You don't need to. My son did over 600 lessons in Typing Club, and it's a lovely, interactive, fantastic. So why is it that IT professionals can't type? It's like taxi drivers who don't know where to go to. So as an IT professional, it is your duty to become a good typist and be one of those people who buy those keyboards. Have you ever seen those blank keyboards that have no letters on them? Once you learn to type, you too can be cool and have these keyboards and totally stuff up your punctuation, because you never know where the punctuation actually is. So I recommend Typing Club. Somebody's saying, how do you report incorrect code found in the AWS docs? So as mentioned, you can click that feedback button is the easiest way, or if you can improve it yourself, you're welcome to put it in GitHub. Do you know there are typing computer games? Yeah, that Typing Club includes some typing games in there as well. So you'll have practice learning to type, and then sort of a bubble floats over, and if you type fast enough, you can catch up with the bubble or the balloon that goes across. So gamification is wonderful. I used to play World of Warcraft. I lost a few years of my life playing World of Warcraft. I can't remember what it was. It was great fun, but gamification is wonderful. What do we got here? Redshift to store a comment on, and it could store comments on all of these different things. So I'm going to show off my amazing knowledge and say that they can do it on, oops, constraints, databases, views. Views are fantastic ways of controlling access to certain columns within a database. Okay, so we can store a comment. You can use these comments to store descriptions. It might need a bit of table joining to access. See, let's put a link back to this page. I will use my little plugin. This plugin generates a markdown script. If you're interested in what this plugin does, just follow the bit.ly link here. I've documented a few things. Another thing I've done is Stack Overflow questions give you the ability to share, and when you share, I've got a little plugin that converts this sharing thing into, again, a link to a Stack Overflow page. So that's another plugin that I've referenced on my documentation page, and I think I'll give it that little bit of an answer. He seems to have tagged it correctly, so I'm not going to bother editing that code. So Richard, I hope you appreciate that. Salam alaikum. Thank you very much, Visual Geek. Visual Geek. To answer all types of AWS related questions. So I have a confession to make. I am a generalist. Now, I am in awe of specialists out there. There are people who know machine learning and they can do fantastic things in machine learning. I don't understand machine learning. I've tried to watch online lectures and all these things. I just don't get it. I can describe it at high level, but when it comes to the math, I can't do it. Instead, I'm a generalist, so I know a little bit about every service on AWS. How do I do that? When I joined AWS 7 years ago, I listened to every session from AWS reInvent. So AWS reInvent is our annual user conference held in Las Vegas. I just looked up recently, Las Vegas is currently experiencing 25% unemployment. It'll probably get worse than that, so a bit of a ghost town at the moment. Hope you get better, Las Vegas. Las Vegas is not just a place for casinos. Las Vegas is also a place that has an Amazon company. And an Amazon company is called Zappos. And Zappos started by selling shoes, but they now sell a whole lot of fashion accessories. And Zappos is famous for their customer service. I like their logo here, says powered by service. And Zappos, I went through there's a tour. You can do a tour of Zappos. And I took a tour through their customer service department, and in the customer service area they had postcards and colored pencils, so customer service reps are encouraged to write little thank you cards back to customers. They do things like free return shipping in case the size was wrong. Zappos wanted to be available 24 hours for customers, and so they actually moved to Las Vegas to provide, because Las Vegas is a great town for providing 24-hour support for staff who are living there. Maybe you're working the midnight shift and you want to go to a supermarket at weird times. Las Vegas has everything open. So they actually moved into the old city town hall and took it over, and they're running a great company there. So not everything in Vegas is gambling. I also went to a fulfillment center one time in Las Vegas, which is the returns center. So typically, can you speak in French, please? No. When I went to the fulfillment center in Las Vegas, if you ship anything that gets shipped to the USA, and if you want to return something to Amazon.com, the return address is a fulfillment center in Las Vegas, and it's filled with racks and racks of returned items. When an item comes back, let's see if I can give you an image of a Amazon fulfillment center. When an item comes back, they look at it and they go, oh, can this item be resold? Is it still in the original condition? Can we resell at a discount? Was it faulty? Do we have to send it back to the original manufacturer? And the fulfillment center I went to is not as big as this. It wasn't robotics or anything. It was just filled with shelves and shelves of different items. And that's because somebody might return a food mixer, somebody might return a book, somebody might return an IT component. So the shelves were filled with lots and lots of different things. And if they deemed that the item could be resold because somebody just changed their mind, if you ordered a single item, that order would go to the Las Vegas fulfillment center and they would ship the item from there. Whereas if you're ordering multiple items, it might go to a different fulfillment center. So lots of things are happening in Las Vegas aside from gambling. If you do go to Las Vegas, I recommend you sign up. You've got to sign up in advance for a Zappos Insight tour, and you can see what makes Zappos such a great company. I mentioned reInvent, and yes, I agree. BSD guy, I hope reInvent happens this year. reInvent has grown phenomenally. Started at 8,000 people. The last one was 55,000 people attending Las Vegas. They took over the whole strip. It's quite an amazing event. If you can't attend Vegas, or maybe you can attend and you can't see everything, you can still see all of the videos on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, you can say, I want to see AWS reInvent 2019, and all of the videos are available online. But I don't know about you, I can't sit down and watch videos. They're too slow. Yeah, you can double the speed, but it's a little bit boring. Instead, I like to listen to a lot of these things as a podcast while I'm walking the dog or commuting to work or doing the gardening. So one thing I've done for the last several years is I've made pages like this. I'll put it in chat. And this is a page with all of the reInvent sessions for the particular year. If you change the URL, you'll find other years. And it links to the YouTube. It also links to an audio version of the session, and if available, the slide decks that came with it. So if I'm in here and I want to look for a session on Redshift, lots of announcements, state-of-the-art data warehousing, Redshift Reimagined, now new R3 clusters, and Aqua, which is a fast caching layer for Redshift. So these are great sessions. I highly recommend that you look for a service you're particularly interested in, load in your favorite podcast app, and you can gain some AWS knowledge while doing your gardening type thing. So let's see, any more questions to answer here? Thank you for hanging in with me here. Oh, I wish all the reInvent videos had the presenter's name in their description so you can easily find it. Very, very good point, actually. These sessions, I pulled out all of the information from the data in YouTube, but YouTube did not have the presenter name. I'll do that for next year, because sometimes knowing who the presenter was could be very important, and a lot of people remember a topic by the person who presented it, not necessarily by what the topic itself was. Some really, really great sessions there with the reInvent. Thanks, Mr. Bob. Self-hosting Font Awesome on S3. Oh, that's interesting. Font Awesome is a wonderful tool. I was using it just recently. Sometimes you need to put various symbols and logos and all that on your website. And rather than including them as pictures, Font Awesome is a font, sort of, which has a whole lot of icons. And it's almost 8,000 icons, disability things. You want to use Amazon S3 and you want to show a bucket in there. Bitbucket. It's a Bitbucket logo. You want to put an AWS logo in something. Here is an AWS logo. You want to put a link to Facebook. They've got Facebook icons in here. Maybe you just want to show a document icon. It has various versions of document icons. Or maybe you want to show an upload icon. And you'll recognize a lot of these icons from your favorite websites, and it makes it very easy, just one line of code to include Font Awesome in there, and you can include these standard icons within your content, and not as a picture, it's actually in line with the text. So Font Awesome is a really great tool. You'll notice some of these are dimmed. That's a pro thing. So anything that's lit up you can use for free. Anything that's pro you have to subscribe, and lots and lots of icons. It also has fantastic stuff where you can animate things. So here's a whole lot of icons. You can change the colors. Works fantastic with CSS, cascading style sheets. Nice and interactive. You can also take, some of them are solid, outlines, light, duotone. That's something new. Quidditch. There is a Quidditch icon in Font Awesome. How Font Awesome is that? The other thing you can do is you can animate. Let's go to the documentation. Do you ever see the spinning please wait animation? Animating icons. Rather than having to make 32 different things of a spinning icon, these are actually the same icon with a rotation factor put on it. And Style sheets allow you to specify an animation parameter and how fast they should spin, etc. So these are all just one icon which is being rotated. Fantastic what you can do within Font Awesome. Okay, why am I talking about that? Somebody's saying, I'm trying to self-host Font Awesome using less, but I'd like to serve up the CSS and web fonts directories from S3 instead of from the site for performance. Is this possible? Oh, it's all relative. Can I create a kit like Font Awesome does with their own CDN? Okay, so they're not really using Font Awesome. In Font Awesome, you get to include upgrading self. Oh, did I say hosting your Font Awesome yourself? You can self-host. So that's probably what they're doing there. It's showing everything they need to do this, so I don't know what is necessarily got going wrong. Okay, I'm going to skip that because it's not on AWS and I'll move on, but I love talking about all these things, so I hope you've been enjoying all of my random ramblings that have been going on. Using a CDN could be better for them. Do you think that's what they were going on about, that it was slow? Can I create a kit like Font Awesome? I really don't know. Here, I'll put a link to this question. I highly encourage any of you who know more about what they might be doing, please hop in there and give an answer to that question. I'm not sure what it's about. CloudWatch monitoring alarm is triggered when an instance is off. Here's an interesting thing I discovered about CloudWatch in general. If something is 0, often the metric does not get sent to CloudWatch. For example, you might have an Amazon Simple Queue service, SQSQ. If the queue is empty, there's a CloudWatch metric called approximate number of messages visible, which says how many messages are in the queue. If the queue is empty, it doesn't necessarily send the 0 metric to CloudWatch, so it's hard to create an alarm to say, warn me when the queue is empty, when it doesn't actually trigger anything. So you have to create an alarm based on no data coming in, which is normally an indication that the queue is empty. So sometimes CloudWatch alarms, when things are off, can be a little bit tricky to configure. What are you saying here? It's possible to create a VPC in AWS, collect several clients' locations using a VPN and route traffic between locations via AWS. Oh, is it possible? Let's have a look here. Is it possible to create a VPC in AWS? Yes. Connect several client locations using VPN. And route traffic between locations. Thank you, Classical Uncle. This white paper, AWS VPN options. There is a wonderful white paper out there called VPC Connectivity Options. I'll put a link here in the chat. And if nothing else, this has lots of very nice pictures in it that explain various concepts. So excuse me while I scroll through and look for some pretty pictures. Here is showing how you normally have a VPC and it is connected to the internet where you've got your own network. Very good. Here is where you've got a backup VPN connection. Maybe you want 2 VPN connections to your on-premise data center in case a connection fails. Or here you are connecting via Direct Connect. Direct Connect is our AWS service that allows you to build a fiber connection between your on-premise data center and the cloud. So that's showing a pretty diagram there. And it gets more and more complex. And there is something to answer your question. And it's called this thing, the VPN Cloud Hub. The concept is that you could have multiple locations using a VPN connection to connect into an Amazon VPC. And what you can do here is each of these sites can not only connect to the resources in AWS, but they can also route to each other. Now, this would be cheaper than putting your own data connections between each of your offices and AWS. So each of them just needs a connection into AWS, and then they can route traffic between each other. Though I'm Australian and the official word here is route, I train myself in IT to say route. So you can route the traffic between your locations. Please be aware you will be charged the appropriate data transfer charge for the connections that are going there. So if you're sending a lot of information between sites, that might add up to a bit of data transfer costs. I also say data instead of data, though sometimes I put my data in the database. Data transfer costs might not make it worthwhile to do this type of architecture. It might be more worthwhile joining a connection, so your mileage may vary. AWS also introduced something called the new VPN. That's exactly what I was looking for, so definitely have a look at that. Is it called site-to-site VPN? Here it is. I haven't played around with this one. So this is a site-to-site VPN. Traditionally, if I just go back to this other diagram, you had to have a permanent VPN connection terminating what's called a virtual private cloud. And thanks, Rashid. It was a permanent connection from each office, and it was a little bit difficult to configure. Whereas from my understanding, a site-to-site VPN is just like you use to connect to your corporate office, where you fire up a temporary VPN connection and you say, dial in, do all my stuff, and then you can disconnect whenever you wish. So this might be a way that you want to connect in as well, just using a site-to-site VPN. Previously, you had to run a EC2 instance in your VPC to act as a public destination point for your VPN, but we can do that for you. Charges do apply. So between all of those, you'll hopefully figure it out. Any other questions, just throw them in chat. Happy to answer things. We'll go a little bit longer with some questions. For me, it's only 12:30 in the afternoon on Thursday. So for those of you watching me later in the night elsewhere, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate having you. CloudWatch monitoring is triggered when an instance is off. Excellent. Is that what they wanted to do there? I have some alarms to check when an instance is left idle. So a lot of people like to know when they can turn things off. And I like to say the best way to save money in AWS is to turn things off. When you're not using them, just turn it off. I'm in the future, so you want some lottery numbers. Yeah, it is a bit strange. I've flown between Australia and the USA sometimes, and there was one time I had 2 birthdays because I left on my birthday and I arrived on my birthday. That was really good. Typically when I fly to the USA, I arrive before I leave. So the flight takes no time at all, but when I fly back, I lose a day. So you've got to pay for it at some point. So I've got some alarms when an instance is left idle. So the best way to save money on AWS is turn things off when you're not using them. And you can also use things like spot instances. I'm watching the future back in Wednesday. Instead of watching a previously recorded video, you're watching a future streamed video. The conditions are when 12 consecutive data points at 5 minutes each are found to have an average of under 1% CPU. Okay, so what he's saying is, I'm going to assume the instance is not being used if, in general, my CPU is very low. One problem with this is operating systems do strange things at night. They might do updates. They might back up some data, who knows. So low CPU is not guaranteed from a machine that is not doing anything. Computers have a mind of their own. So they've got this alarm when it's under 1% for at least 12 consecutive periods of 5 minutes. 12 times 5 is 60. So they're basically saying if it's been not used very much for an hour, notice they've said consecutive. So one period could be higher, one period could be lower. They're taking the average, which is good, and it has to be for an hour, but they're looking at every 5 minute period rather than the average of the whole time. The alarm gets triggered in the case of an instance being up and running for an hour with under 1% usage. Good. However, it's also triggered when the instance is shut off, because when you turn off an instance, you're using the operating system, it's suddenly doing lots of CPU, and therefore, hi Mark Kumas from regional Victoria. Hope things are going well for you in Victoria. Australia has locked down a number of states, so it's not easy to go between states in Australia. So I think Victoria is okay. I cannot visit the state of Queensland at the moment. I'm in Sydney, New South Wales, but greetings to Victoria. So when they're shutting off the instance, it has 30 minutes, then it's turned off. The alarm will be triggered in 30 minutes. Because lots of CPU happen when you shut down the machine, the alarm goes off. How can I set this alarm so it is either one? Either you say either or either. Only I see what he's doing here. Let me fix the formatting. So it is either 1 only triggered or 2. Thank you very much. I'll save that as a formatting thing while I'm here. Any tags to put? Nope, good tags. Oh no, somebody's answered this. Only trigger when the instance is running, or only when it's blah blah blah. And somebody says, oh, it's the same person answered their own question an hour later. If you go CloudWatch, select alarm, missing data, treat as good data, not breaching alarm. This ties in with what I said in the beginning. When the instance is off, it will not send any data to this alarm For missing data, treat it as good, not breaching alarm. So that means after the instance is stopped, I see what's happening here. So the instance is very busy when it shuts down. Time flows, and an hour later, the average will be very high because there is no metrics for the hour since then, but in that 5-minute period, there was a lot of activity. So what he's doing is he's saying, treat the missing data as good. So there was one breaching period out of those 12, and it won't set the alarm off. So that's very good information. I will give you an upvote, Eric, for providing that information. So it is quite okay on Stack Overflow to answer your own question. So let's say you've worked and you've just spent the last 3 hours trying to solve something, and you go, yay, I finally figured it out. How will I remember? You can make your own Stack Overflow answer and question, or help other people do it. And you can just create a question. Please do it as a question, and please do it as an answer. And that way, somebody else looking for the same information will be helped in future. That Jeff Atwood video that I mentioned before, where he talks about how to write good Stack Overflow answers, he did a really good thing. He described Stack Overflow as being a wiki. So if you think Wikipedia, it's all about the community can update the information that's on there. And Stack Overflow is also a wiki. I can go in there, I can improve the questions, doing some formatting. I have occasionally gone in and updated somebody's answer. For instance, they might talk about a product and I might put a link into it. So I won't totally change their answer, but I will try and improve it a little bit. And a lot of people are scared of doing that, but it's all about improving the quality of what's out there on Stack Overflow. So thank you very much, Eric, for providing the information. It is a difficult topic. Elastic Beanstalk. Sliding window of count distinct for 12 months on Athena. I won't necessarily answer this, but it's worth talking about Amazon Athena. When you have a database, you load the data into the database. You load the data into the database. You load the data into the database. And it takes a lot of work to get the data in the right format of the database, but it runs really, really fast. If you have data in S3, it's hard to query. But Amazon Athena is one of our services that allows you to query data stored in S3. And this is a radical concept. Behind the scenes, it uses something called Presto, which normally runs in a Hadoop environment. And Athena, you can point it to data stored in S3 and run an SQL query across all the data files. This is great where you have lots of data in lots of different files. Maybe you have an hourly data dump, so you've got thousands of files you want to query. Maybe you've got a hierarchy of of folders where you say, this is Mondays, this is Tuesday, this is Wednesday. You can look through all the subdirectories and gather information from those buckets as well. It's a really, really great service for doing querying. You wouldn't necessarily run an application on this, but it's a great way to look through a lot of archive data. I'll give you an example. Think of a telco who has lots of call data of telephone calls. Lots and lots of data every time you make a phone call. They want to, it's too hard to keep all of that information in a database. So they would want to maybe store it in S3 that is not as expensive as storing something in a database. It doesn't slow things down. But occasionally they'll get a court order saying, please provide us, is it performant? That's the question. Amazon Athena, I'll come to that. So Athena can query this data stored in S3 without having to load in a database. So they might get a court order saying, show me all the phone calls for this month for this phone number, we think this person is a criminal. And rather than having to load it back into a database and do the query, Athena could just look through the raw files. It could be in CSV format, in JSON format. They can be zipped. There's even some funky formats known as Parquet or ORC, which are columnar-based formats that sort of have an index in the top, so you can jump to the right bit of the data without having to read through the full file. So it's a really, really great way to read through lots of data that's out there, and a lot of big data people do it. So is Athena performant? I've got to find an AWS blog about Athena. In fact, I made a bookmark on this. I use a bookmarking service called Pinboard. Let me just find this one. Athena. Where's my blog? It might be this one. And is it this blog? Yes. I'll put a link to this one in the chat. Pinboard, I was just mentioning, if you ever find this is a social bookmarking website, and if you want to bookmark a particular page, I've got a plugin here where I can just tag it. I've already tagged this page with Athena, and it stores it in Pinboard. Then I can go back to Pinboard and say, show me everything I tag with this particular thing. Costs about $11 a year. It's run by one guy, fantastic. It's called pinboard.in. If any of you used to use Delicious, it's that same sort of concept. You can store your tags in there. Storing things as bookmarks in your browser is silly because hierarchies are hard to find. Use a social bookmarking site. I guess a bit like Pinboard. You can also make private things. So, is Athena performant? Hi, Ray Coco. Thanks for joining us. Is Athena performant? You can, first of all, Athena is charged. If we look at the pricing for Athena, it's charged by the amount of data read from disk. So the price per query for Athena, you can save 30 to 90% by getting performance by compressing, partitioning, and converting your data into columnar formats. And that's exactly what I want to show here. So it's normally charged at $5 per terabyte of data scanned from disk. But if you zip your data, zipping is often, especially text files, you get down to about 10% of the size. So it's really great. You can therefore get, it's 1/10 of the price. Another thing you can do, and this blog article is really good in explaining it, and you can follow along and try it yourself. You can partition the data. And the partitioning means I want to store, any pretty pictures here? I want to store different directories. So you can have a field called year and another field called month, a field by day. And if you partition by them, it will create separate directories of data files containing that information. And then if you run a query on month 02, it knows not to look in the folder which contains 01. So it saves a lot of reading from disk. The thing that makes a database slow is reading from disk. So it can skip over it, just the same as Redshift does. And the third technology you can use is converting to columnar formats like Parquet and ORC. And they have built-in indexes that allow you to jump to the information you want. A columnar database stores each column separately. So if you're just retrieving from column 1 and column 10, it doesn't have to read all the 9 columns that are between there. It can just jump straight to those column values. Can you partition by a composite key? Yes, you can create a hierarchy. So you could literally have a directory, for year, a directory by month, and a directory by day. So it creates a hierarchy of directories in there. Not so much a composite single key, but if you had a field, you could partition on that, but you can create the hierarchies in there. File system query language. Yeah, it sort of is like that. It's Athena lets you query based on data in a file system. Redshift has something called Redshift Spectrum, which I think they've also called the Redshift Lakehouse, which is a play on words of a data lake. And a great way to make things a lot faster. Why are we talking about Athena? I have a fairly basic data set where I have a table containing a timestamp of every time a user interacts with an app. Okay, lots of data. Great thing for Athena. An active user is classified as someone who has, in the previous 12 months, interacted with the app at least once. Lots of people doing analysis of weblogs want to find what is an active user. Like an active user, or how long is a session? Every time somebody goes to a web page, it's just one transaction. But if they go to a web page, several in one, maybe 30 seconds later they click a link, 2 minutes later they click a link, you call that an active session. So you've got to make up rules to say a session ends if somebody does not go to another web page within 5 minutes. If they come back after 10 minutes, we call that another session. So this is quite a common thing that used in querying log files. I need to produce a table that tells me by day, going back n days, how many active users there were in the prior 12 months period, and I need to run it in Athena. Luckily, somebody's come up and so Gordon Linoff is an amazing fellow. My StackOverflow reputation is great. It's 100,000. His is 950,000-ish. He seems to answer every single SQL question on StackOverflow. So my hat's off. He's in the top 0.01% of users on StackOverflow. And he's got a link to his book, Data Analysis. Oh yeah, this is true legend level. So in StackOverflow, you can say, show me who are the top users. So for the year 2020 so far, Gordon is rated the #1 contributor based on his contributed 50,000 reputation this year. So that's about half of what I've done over a 5-year period he's done in just 1 year. You can also come here and say total reputation. I am oh wow, I'm the 80th biggest reputation on Stack Overflow. Apparently there's only there's only 870 users with over 100,000 reputation on Stack Overflow. Where is Gordon? Gordon Linoff is, how do we do this? I don't want the year, I want not the year. I'll have to find, no, here it is, year, all time. That's what I was looking for. I am all time 600, yay. Gordon, oh, here he is. He is the number 2 ranked Stack Overflow answerer. So we have been in the presence of God here. Maybe he's just using Watson behind the scenes. That would be amazing. What if you used an AI based on Stack Overflow to answer Stack Overflow questions, where it just keeps feeding back into itself? That'd be an amazing thing. Gordon, if I take out the search, the biggest person of all time is this famous John Skeet, who has over 1 million reputation. So quite an amazing effort. So he's been a member about the same time, and he has 10 times the amount of reputation that I do. The guy must have retired from the tech scene to have enough time to answer all these questions. Luckily, I'm allowed to do some of this as part of my job. As a technical evangelist, I'm allowed to answer questions on Stack Overflow. Hi, my name's John Rotenstein. Follow me on Stack Overflow or Twitter, whatever you want. I used to do it in my spare time, but maybe this gives him enough reputation that he can sell his books and things. Who knows? So if Gordon Linoff has answered a question, I will immediately bow down and say, sorry, I think he's correct. Now, one problem with answering questions on SQL is there's many different flavors of SQL. So fortunately, this person said they're using Athena. Sometimes people will say they're using MySQL or Redshift, whatever. So Gordon here is saying he doesn't have access to Athena, and it's hard to figure out the right syntax. It seems to be an older version of Presto, so he's correct. Athena's using Presto. Gordon's asking about Athena. AWS Athena doc. I should hire John Skeet. I don't know why Gordon didn't just do a query for Athena documentation, but is there a good link? SQL reference. So I'll just say as a comment, not as an answer. Here's the SQL reference for Amazon Athena. And my little copy utility has pasted it nicely in the markdown format. So I've never met Gordon, but to me he's like a hero. I meet people who say that I'm a hero on Stack Overflow, but to me he's the real hero there. Is there a schedule for this on Twitch? So, thank you, Korean Zombie. This is my first attempt to do this show, and I'll probably end it soon because I've been going for a couple of hours. This has been a bit of a test, so I'm very interested to find out if you folks thought that this was a worthwhile session. As you noticed, I don't just answer questions. I go off on a lot of tangents, makes things a little bit interesting. I used to be an AWS trainer, so I do that a lot. But since I answer Stack Overflow questions every day, I thought I would do it online and share it with all of you folks. So my intention is to keep doing this at the same time each week. So subtract 2 hours from the time you are currently watching this. It's 11 a.m. in Sydney on Thursdays. And I'll do this for a couple of hours each week. If you find it good, make your own channel. I would make my own channel, and I do have my own channel, but the problem is no one would watch it because most streamers on Twitch have no one watching them, and it's only over time that reputation goes up. So the benefit of doing this on the AWS channel is, hey, at least you folks found me. We'll do some publicity and let people know that this show is going on. This is one of the better AWS streams. Yeah, there's nothing more disappointing than just two heads chatting all the time and not doing stuff. So I'd love to build a community of Stack Overflow answerers amongst all of you. So do things together with me is great. Thanks, Soldats. Thanks, very good. Let's see if we can pick something else here. Billing dashboards. EKS. Give me something with some code. Enable push notification endpoints. Should I fix this spelling? I'll just stop. Sorry, their spelling. I shouldn't assume it's a male. Replication in AWS as data backup. there's two answers here already, so I won't necessarily answer it, but I do want to mention here, there's replication available on S3. We have something called cross-region replication that will replicate your data to a different bucket in a different region, and more recently we introduced a same region replication that does the same thing within the region. And I think the reason they introduced it is because some companies say, hey, we have a rule that says we must back up our data to another location that is at least X miles or kilometers between. So if you have a truck that rolls over, catches fire, burns down a data center, you want to have a backup of your data. It's worth mentioning that anything in S3 is automatically replicated between at least 3 different data centers. So it's a highly resilient service in that if we have multiple copies of your data. So if one data center goes down, don't worry, your data is safe. But we don't tell you where the data centers are, so you don't know how far apart they are. So if you need to replicate to another one further away, you can use cross-region replication. By the way, we introduced 2 new regions over the last week in Cape Town, I think it was, in South Africa, and in Milan, Italy. So lots of regions. So you can say, please replicate my data to Milan, and I guarantee you that Milan is at least 100 kilometers away from the region you are probably currently using. So it's a great way to replicate the data out there. When you replicate, you can replicate in 2 directions. So you can say replicate this bucket to that bucket, and replicate that bucket to this bucket, and it sort of figures out what to do without overwriting things. You need versioning to be turned on in your buckets to be able to do so. One thing you cannot do is chaining. You can't say replicate this bucket to that bucket and that bucket to that bucket. It doesn't copy all the files along. It's got a certain logic of figuring out how it does it. Also, I don't know if it replicates deletions. I've got to see if it replicates a deletion. Because versioning is on, you don't actually delete objects, you would just put a delete marker on the object so you can still obtain it. I do have a schedule for this stream. I intend doing it this time minus 2 hours every week. So Thursday 11 AM Sydney time, subtract 2 hours from wherever you're watching now and join me on this stream in future. Thanks for asking, Classic Nations. And somebody's commented here and explained pretty much exactly what I told you within that answer, but it's worth understanding there. Assign or replace profile. Let's find a nice question to take us out on. Programmatically move files from S3 bucket to a Windows EC2 and vice versa. I see a lot of people who are tempted to mount S3 on their computers because they understand how disks work and they want to use S3 as a disk. Please do not do that, especially in a production environment. It is not a reliable type connection. You should always programmatically copy files up and down from S3. I want to push files to an EC2 Windows instance and also get folders from my EC2 instance and store it in S3. Don't know what that means. As I have many EC2s, I want to automate this. I have a node server on ECS, which is our Elastic Container service, that uses an SSH FTP library. Whoa. They push files into it. This isn't robust. When I have 5 or 6 users pushing files at the same time, is there a better way to do it? And a person is recommending the Jarmod, he's an AWS staff member as well. He's best to do with the disk-cp if the volume is large. Thanks, Moopy. Disk-cp is something used with Hadoop. It stands for distributed copy, and it's a way to copy thousands and thousands of files between locations, typically in S3 and Hadoop type clusters. The SSM run command is a great way to run a command on an instance rather than... It's very hard to push things to an EC2 instance because typically a computer is secure and protected and you can't make things happen except through a web server. And what was I saying there? And it's hard to trigger things on EC2, but you can use the systems manager run command, which is a way to trigger a command to run on an EC2 instance. Or if you have a cluster of 100 machines, you can say run this command on the 100 machines. It will come back and say it worked on these 98 machines. These 2 machines came back with an error. So it's a really good way to run something on an EC2 instance. Thanks, Chaotic. And I'm still trying to figure out what they're doing here. Push files to a Windows instance and also get folders from my EC2 and store it in S3. Rather than pushing things to EC2, I find the best thing is to pull from S3. So I'm going to put a little comment on that. It's not as good as an answer, but I'm going to put a comment, and we're going to use the AWS S3 sync command. The sync command in the AWS CLI is fantastic. It will automatically copy your files to S3 or down from S3 or even, I think, on your local disk. But it will only copy files that are new or have changed since the last time you've done it. So I will go and recommend that they do that. You might want to pull from S3 on a regular cycle on each machine using the AWS CLI. I have a nice little link in here that I use, linking to the AWS CLI, AWS S3 sync command C, C sync AWS CLI command reference. That might hopefully help them. So there we are. I might pause a little bit from what we've been doing there, and thank you for joining me for these last couple of hours. If you enjoy this, you'll find my email address in my Stack Overflow profile. You can always drop me an email. You've got my Twitter showing on the screen there, J Rotenstein, and also I've got my the link to my Bitly resources there. So thank you very much for joining in, and if people enjoy this, I'll keep doing it each week, and I'll try and get through more Stack Overflow questions and just teach things about AWS in general. So thank you very much for joining me. I'll hang here for a few minutes in case you have any questions or contact things. Next time I'll join from a computer and help. Yeah, Mr. Bob, that'll be great. It'll be very interesting to see what we do about having a community of Stack Overflow answerers. I've actually made contact with some of the top answerers on Stack Overflow, so I can go in here and say, hey, of people who answer things on the Stack Overflow tag, show me the top users. And yes, I'm at the top. Martin, we saw, he's in Australia. Michael is I've made contact with him. He's in Cincinnati. Some of these top users are in Pakistan. Somebody's in the Palestinian territories, in Mexico, in Australia. So there's a whole range of users all around the world. So it's really great that people answer things on Stack Overflow. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bring your questions if you want. Thank you very much. Bye.